Hello again, this is Miss Jody from the Literacy Volunteers in Harrison County, and I've come to tell you a story. Probably you've heard it before, and it's called The Ugly Duckling by Hans Christian Andersen. Now I have to tell you personally, I don't like to call anybody or anything ugly. I'd rather say they just look a little different. But the name of the story is The Ugly Duckling, so that's what we're going to call it. Okay. It was so lovely in the country. It was summer. The wheat was yellow, the oats were green, and the hay was stacked in the green meadows. And down there, a stork was tiptoeing on his red legs, jabbering Egyptian, a language of his mother had taught him. Round about the fields and meadows were great forests, and in the middle of the forest lay a deep lake. Yes, it was indeed lovely. Bathed in sunshine, there stood an old manor house, surrounded by a deep moat, and from the walls, down by the water, the bank was covered with great rhubarb leaves. The place was as much of a wilderness as the densest wood, and there sat a duck on her nest. Duck. She was busy hatching her ducklings. But she was almost tired of it because sitting was such a hard business, and she had very few people come to see her. The other ducks thought it was more fun to swim around in the moat and come and gossip. At last, one eggshell after another began to crack, and cheep, 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 cheep. All the yolks had come to life, and they were quacking their heads off. Quack, quack, said the duck, and all of her ducklings came scurrying. The mother duck let them know how much they liked because green is good for the eyes. How big the world is, all the ducklings for once comfortable, and they were lying in the egg. You imagine this is the whole world, asked their mother. It goes far beyond the garden. And she said, I've never been there yet, and I hope we're all here. I haven't even been there. But the biggest nest, there was another egg, and it was a big one, and it hadn't hatched yet. I'm getting rather bored with this whole thing, and she sat down on the nest. The last egg is taking an awfully long time, said the duck. It won't break, and let me show you the others. They're the sweetest little ducklings. Let me look at that egg that won't break, said the old duck. Are you sure it's not even a turkey egg? I was rather fooled once. I quacked them. Let me see the egg. Of course, if I've taken so much trouble, I might as well just sit a little longer, said the duck. Please yourself. At last, the big egg cracked. Cheep, cheep, said the youngster, scrambling out. It was so big and so ugly. The duck looked at it. What a frightfully big duckling you are. None of my others look like that. Could you possibly be a turkey? Well, we'll soon find out. The next day, the weather turned glorious. Mother duck appeared with her family. Splash, they all went into the water. Quack, 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 she said. One duckling after another plumped in the water. The water closed over their heads, but they popped up again, and their legs worked of their own accord, and they were swimming. But the ugly gray creature was swimming with them. That's no turkey, she said. Look how nicely he uses his legs. How straight he holds himself. He isn't really so bad if you really look at him. Quack, quack, come along with me. I'll take you out to the world. So they made their entrance into the junkyard. What a pandemonium. Pandemonium means a lot of noise. Two families were quarreling over this. There they are. There's the way of the world, said Mother Duck. Now use your legs, she said. Move briskly and curtsy. Be nice and polite to people. It's a great distinction, she said, being a high honor bestowed upon a duck. Now hurry, don't turn your toes in. She teaches them how to swim. And they all did as they were told, and the other ducks around and around. There now, we have a crowd. But what a dreadful looking creature, the others would say. Oh, we don't put up with him. Leave him alone, said the mother. He's not bothering any of you. I know, but the duck who had bitten him, but he's too big and he's odd looking. Who wants that? They're pretty children you've got, Mother, said one other duck. They're all so nice, except that one. He's so big and ugly. Oh, he's not handsome. He's good as gold. He swims as well or better than the others. I expect his looks will improve. He was in the egg too long. She pecked at his neck and brushed up his little man. As it happens, maybe he's a drake, which is a man-type duck. There's a mama duck, and then the drake is the father. The other ducklings are lovely. Bring him in, and so they all felt at home. But the poor duckling, who was the last to be hatched, looked so ugly, was bitten and buffeted. The others knocked into him. He's too big, they all said. So maybe he's an emperor. No. The poor duckling did not know where to turn. He was miserable because of his ugliness. And so it went. The first day, and it got worse and worse, day after day. The poor duckling just chased everybody. His own brothers and sisters were nasty to him. I wish he were miles away. The ducks bit him and sent him on his way. Half running, he ran over the fence. The little bird said, "Oh, look at that ugly duck." So he closed his eyes and he kept running, and finally he came to a great marsh where all the wild ducks lived. In the morning, the wild ducks flew up and looked at their new companion. "What sort of fellow are you?" The duckling turned in every direction, bowing as nicely as he could. "You're appallingly ugly," they said. "You're so ugly, would you like to join us as a bird?" "Quack, quack, you're so ugly you might as well appeal to others." Well, shots sprang out, and all the wild ducks were being shot. Great shoot was going on. Men were lying under cover, shooting them all. Blue smoke. Through the mud, the gun dogs came. They looked down at this ugly duckling, scared out of his wits, trying to hide his head under his wing. Suddenly, a big, fierce look, he opened his jaws wide because he was going to bite this ugly duckling. "Thank heavens I'm so ugly, even the dog won't bite me." And so he lay perfectly still. Toward the evening, when everything quieted down, the poor duckling didn't want to move. Late that night, he reached a wretched little hut, and he stayed, "I don't know which way to turn." The storm grew and grew and grew, and then he noticed the door and he went in. An old woman lived in the house. She looked at him, and the cat looked at him, and they all rubbed against the fur the wrong way, and the hen had short legs, and the chickens didn't like him, the cat didn't like him. "What's the matter?" asked the old woman. "What a windfall. Now I shall have duck eggs," because she thought he was going to make eggs. "Can you lay eggs?" "No." "Well, then we better keep your mouth shut." She didn't even want him there because he was no good. Duckling sat in the corner feeling very gloomy and depressed. Suddenly he thought of fresh air and the bright sunshine. "So, what's the matter with you?" said the hen. "You haven't anything to do. You either lay eggs or you purr like a cat." But it wasn't going to work. "So then you're crazy, I think." And the cat sent him away. Well, if you don't understand, who would? And so the old woman didn't like him, the cat didn't like him, the chickens didn't like him. "Don't make yourself such airs," they said. "Don't pretend. But you talk such nonsense, tell you unpleasant things." And he runs out, and you still can't do anything. The duckling said, "I think I'd better go out in the wide world." "Please yourself," said the hen. So the duckling went away. He swam in the water and dived down, and he was snubbed by every creature because of his ugliness. Autumn came in. That was spring. Now it's autumn, so it's been months and months. The leaves in the woods turned yellow and brown. The wind caught him, whirled around him. The clouds hung low, heavy with hail and snowflakes. On the fence perched a raven, trembling in the cold. "Caw, caw," said the raven. The mere thought of it, because it was going to get winter. One evening, when the sun was setting all around, a big flock of big, handsome birds came out of the bushes. The duckling had never seen anything quite so beautiful as these birds. They were dazzlingly white, long necks. They were swans. They uttered the most uncanny cry. They made a funny sound. They rose high, flew in the air, and he could not forget those noble birds when they flew away. He was quite beside himself. He loved them more than anything he loved. He did not envy them because he was a kind bird. As the winter grew cold and bitter, the duckling was forced to swim about in the water to keep from freezing. At last it froze hard, and the ice made a funny noise. You know what happens when it freezes. Then it starts to crack. At the end, he was exhausted. Early morning, a farmer came by, and he saw him, and he went to the ice and helped him get out. The children wanted to play with him, but he thought they meant him harm, so he fluttered and flew away. What a sight he was. And the woman shrieked and yelled and laughed at him. Fortunately, the door was open. It was time and sad. Oh, he was all by himself all winter. Then suddenly he spread his wings, and the sound of their whirring made him realize he was much stronger than he thought. Before he knew it, he found himself in a garden where the apple tree stood in bloom. It was lovely there, so full of freshened spring. Looking out of the thicket in front of him, he saw the 3 beautiful white swans. They ruffled their feathers proudly and floated so lightly on the water. The duckling recognized the glorious creatures because he remembered them from the year before. I will fly near those royal birds. They will probably peck me to death. But he flew into the water and swam with the beautiful swans. They saw him and dashed him with outspread wings because they didn't know who he was. He saw beneath him he looked. You know how sometimes the water makes like a mirror if you look in the water if it's dark. So he looked in there, and he saw beneath it his own image, but it was no longer the image of the ugly bird. He himself was a swan. And it doesn't matter that he was born, and here we have a swan. So here's my swan. So it didn't matter that he was born in a duck yard. He was the only one that had a swan egg. We don't know how the swan egg got near the duck. He felt glad to have been all that trouble, for now he was fully and beautifully a swan. Some little children came to the garden to throw bread. There's a new